guys, welcome to my sewing room. If you guys are new here, hello, my name is Amanda and I teach DIYs like you sew, how to sew beautifully handmade garments. In today's video, I'll be teaching you guys how to create this elegant yet sexy bodycon dress. It has a sweetheart neckline, twisted straps, and the skirt is vented. If you guys are interested in seeing that, stay tuned and don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more videos. Now let's get sewing. Okay, so to start off, you're going to need 2 yards of fabric. I use a satin charmeuse here. You're also going to need 2 yards of lining if you choose to line, and 2 yards of muslin for underlining. If you want to underline, you can also interface this. You're going to want to have that cut out of your bodice pieces, your skirt pieces, and your strap pieces. The strap piece is just the fabric. I have my center front piece here, and I'm going to go ahead and start underlining. Notice when I put the muslin onto the fabric that the charmeuse is bigger than the muslin. That's just because it's hard to get an accurate cut from charmeuse. So I know when I sew my seam allowance, I'm going to use muslin as my guide. And now I'm going to start the underlining process. If you guys need a more in-depth tutorial on how to underline, I have one on my channel. I will link it here in the cards. So go ahead and check that out and come back. I'm going to underline all of my pieces, excluding the straps, of course, because we just cut that out of fabric. But all of the other pieces will be underlined. Now that I have that done, I'm going to put my skirt pieces to the side. And I'm going to start assembling my bodice. I'm going to match up my back pieces, my center back pieces to my back pieces, and my center front pieces to my side front pieces. And I'm going to go ahead and pin those together, right sides together. And I'm going to do the same thing for the skirt pieces. If you have a more detailed print than mine, you may want to make sure that you're lining your pieces up very accurately and maybe even baste them together before you go over to the machine. Now that I have all my pieces pinned right sides together, I'm going to go ahead and take them to my machine and I'm going to sew them together with a 1 centimeter seam allowance, and I'm going to back stitch when I start and back stitch when I end. And I'm also going to do the same for my skirt pieces. And quick note, try not to get your basting thread caught into your stitches so that when it's time to take the basting out, it's really easy. Next time I draft this pattern, I will make sure to not have such a severe bust curve, because that was my issue with this, with the finished dress on this one. But besides that, I mean, I think everything else turned out pretty good. Now that I'm on my center back piece, I'm going to make sure to sew down 1 centimeter past where the vent starts, put my needle down and pivot, and then I'm going to continue sewing a 1 centimeter seam allowance, and I'm going to stop 1 centimeter before I get to the end to make attaching the lining a lot easier. Now that I have all of my pieces sewn, I'm going to go ahead and take them over to my ironing table and give them a good press. Once I've pressed all of the pieces, now it's time to start assembling them. Notice that I pinked my seams just because this fabric frays like crazy, so I made sure to trim down all of my seams with the pinking shears. I'm going to set to the side all of my pieces except my back skirt piece. I'm going to start working on that first. Notice that I have all of the seams pinked except the center back seam. That's because I still need to install my zipper, and I want to make sure that my seam allowance is accurate. I also have notched out the part where the vent starts, just so my center back seam can lay nice and flat. And I pinned my vent closed so that when I iron it, it's easier to iron and the pieces aren't moving around all over the place. You also want to make sure that you're pressing your vent to one side. It doesn't matter what side it is. Just make sure that you're pressing it to one side, and your vent should look like this from the wrong side. And I'm going to go ahead and flip it over, and it should look like this from the right side. It basically is a continuation of your center back seam. Now that I have that straight, I'm going to go ahead and pin my bodice back pieces to my skirt backs. I'm going to make sure to match up my princess seam. That's more important than anything else right now. Match it up, that princess seam, to make sure that all your seams are nice and straight. So I'm going to match that up and go ahead and put a pin there. And then I'm going to work left to right, matching up the rest of my pieces. And I'm going to do the same thing for the other side. Now that I have those pinned together, I'm going to go ahead and put them to the side and work on my front pieces. I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm taking my princess seams and I'm matching them up. And I'm going to pin them. And instead of working towards the middle, I'm going to work outwards. So after I pin them, I'm going to pin the other side and then work outwards, leaving my center front seam open. I noticed that I have an extra bit here. I'm not sure exactly what happened, but I'm going to remedy that by just taking a hand sewing needle and gathering that down or easing it down so that it fits. And after I finished the easing, I'm going to go ahead and distribute the gathers evenly and pin them. Once I have everything pinned together, I'm going to go ahead and take all of my pieces over to my machine and I'm going to sew them together with a 1 centimeter seam allowance. Okay, so after I've done that, notice that I have pinked my seam again and I pressed it upwards towards the bodice. And now would actually be the perfect time to install the zipper before you attach the side seams. I'm not sure why I didn't here, but you should go ahead and attach your zipper now and then do the side seams. So I'm making sure to match my waistline seam and then I'm pinning upwards and downwards like how I did the other seams, just making sure to match all of my pieces together. Then I'm going to take that over to my sewing machine and sew it with a 1 centimeter seam allowance all the way down, making sure that my waistline seam is still pointing upwards. After I finish sewing both my side seams, I'm going to go ahead and take it over to my ironing table and give it a good press. I'm going to pink down my seams and press it open just like I did all of the other seams. And now we're going to go ahead and start working on the straps. I'm placing my straps right sides together and I'm going to sew them with a 1 centimeter seam allowance and turn them out. And you guys, I'm so sorry. I have no idea what happened to the footage of me sewing on the straps, but I do recommend that you just try on the dress and place the straps where you feel comfortable. I'm going to set my dress to the side and start working on my lining. I'm going to start sewing where my zipper stops and stop sewing 1 centimeter past where the vent starts, and I'm not going to sew my vent closed. And I'm also going to assemble all of my other pieces. When I cut the lining out, I cut it out as one piece so there would not be a waistline seam to eliminate the amount of seams that I had to sew. So keep that in mind when you're cutting your pieces out too. Okay, now that I have my dress front sewn and my dress back, I'm going to go ahead and put some boning in it. You don't have to put boning, but I noticed that when I tried on the dress, since I am a D cup, it was a little bit, I needed some support up in there. So I'm going to go ahead and bone just down to the waistline seam. And I'm only boning my princess seams. I'm not boning my side seam because the side seam did not need it. I'm using a 12 millimeter wriggling boning, and I'm going to measure down to my waistline and cut it. And I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing for the other side and for the back. And I'm going to attach my boning and I'll be back. Now I am attaching my zipper. You should have already attached your zipper when your pieces were separate. I'm starting 1 centimeter down from the top, and that's where I'm placing my zipper. And this is what it looks like when it's all said and done. It should look like a center back seam with a little zipper tab at the top. Now I'm going to put my lining wrong side out, and I'm going to place my dress inside of that, and I'm going to pin them right sides together, matching up my princess seams first and pinning all the way around. Make sure that your straps are facing downwards so they don't get caught up in this seam. When I get to my center back seam, I'm going to take the seam allowance that I have for my lining and I'm going to fold it towards the side seam, just the 1 centimeter. And then I'm going to take my zipper tape and I'm going to fold that over the 1 centimeter seam allowance that we already folded back for the lining. And then I'm going to take, I'm going to pin that, and then I'm going to take it over to my sewing machine and sew it down with a 1 centimeter seam allowance all the way around. Once we've done that, I'm going to start with my vent at the back of the dress and the back of the lining. I'm putting them so that they're facing each other. And then I'm going to take the top of the lining and put it with the top piece of, I'll put it right sides together with the top of the vent of the dress. I'm so sorry. I know this is confusing. I'm going to match those up right sides together and I'm going to pin them all the way down. And then I'm going to go ahead and flip the dress over so that I can see the bottom of the vent for both sides. And I'm going to pin those together, right sides together. There are so many different ways to sew the lining for the vent. And I know this way is probably not the most correct way, but it worked for me. I'm still trying to figure out how to sew the vent so it's not puckering. So stay tuned for that. And I'm sewing both those sides together with a 1 centimeter seam allowance. Once they are sewn together, it should look like this. Now keep in mind it hasn't been pressed yet, so that's why it's a little bit bulky. But I mean, it worked for this, but I am trying to find a different way to sew the lining to my vent because my vents look perfect until the lining goes onto it. So now it's time to do the hem. So I'm at the bottom of my dress and I'm folding them in right sides together. And then I'm going to put my hand through an opening at the top and I'm going to pinch that and turn it wrong side out so that my pieces are right side together. And I'm going to match all of my seams all the way around. And I'm going to take it to my sewing machine and sew that together with a 1 centimeter seam allowance. Once I've done that, I'm going to trim down the hem. I should have pinked it, but I didn't. I'm going to trim down the hem all the way around, and then I'm going to take that to my ironing board and give it a really good press. And it should look like this once it's done. And I tried on the dress after this point, but I noticed that my vent kept poking out on me, so I'm going to go ahead and top stitch that down. And it should look like this when it's top stitched down. All that's left to do is to go ahead and slip stitch down your lining to the zipper tape and you're all done. Always, thank you guys so much for watching my video. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, make sure to hit the subscribe button and hit the little bell as well so you can be notified when I post new videos, and I'll see you in my next one.